You can read the title. Uh, I'm gonna do a little who, what, when, where, why, how, and then I'll get into like the meat of the subject. Little, disclaimers. I was gonna say clean up, but that's not what people say. Um, I'm going to discuss the trauma of only myself, truly as much as possible. I'm hoping completely. I don't want to bring my siblings' stuff into this, right? If you experienced childhood trauma, you understand that the same two people can give their kids very different experiences. And I'm not trying to speak to that. And if they don't ever want to watch this, that's also okay. Like they don't need to. So if you're seeing this and you understand like who my siblings are, don't make them feel weird about it, please. Um, okay, so who is this for? Uh, well, at the end of the day, anything you do, you need to do for yourself. But so my mom passed away like 2.5 weeks ago, and I had hinted about it before, but we were no contact at the time of passing as well. And I had known since going no contact the first time, which we'll get into, that her funeral was going to be the most anxiety inducing part of that. Thankfully, I have a really incredible support system, but going into the church was very difficult. We'll get into the Catholic trauma part of it another day, like another time. Focus, focus, focus. Because I didn't know what they had been told, if they had been told, because there's a possibility where, they are told one side of the story because I've been kept away. And of course, I'm painted as the villain, which makes sense from those perspectives, right? But also, these people are Catholics, so they could have known absolutely nothing. I mean, especially in that family, that from my experience, um, just shoving things down and never apologizing for anything was very part of the culture. Um, so I was very pleasantly surprised and so incredibly grateful that basically everybody um, was very, very kind to me, was very open and warm and kind to me, at least to my face. um, there's a few people who weren't, and with the situation being what it was, again, that makes sense from their perspective. And so I guess this video is really for like my aunts, uncles, and cousins, and like whoever else cares to know my side of things, if whoever's interested, okay? Which is why I said, like, don't push my siblings in it. They're not going to be interested, and that's okay. That's okay. Families are complicated, okay? It's okay. um, the what? I wrote down a note for this way in the front of this book. Where are we? Oh, so the what is what I'd like to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about, rather. So I'm not going to get into details about childhood stuff because the number one thing that people is miscomprehend a word. That's the only thing that's coming to me. But the number one thing people don't understand about people who go no contact from parents, guardians, whoever, is it's so much more about who they're being in the present. And things they refuse to address is part of the present because it affects how you are being treated by them in the present. Um, but I do want to give some like context and background because I want to. Again, I'm not going to go into details because I don't need to. I don't care to. You're not my therapist. She already knows. And I've already like kind of gone through that. So another disclaimer, I guess, is like if you're wondering about my demeanor during this and how I seem like pretty okay with it, was like I started mourning her almost a year ago. If not like before we officially went no contact. I started mourning the mom that I thought I had. I'm still grieving for certain. Um, but I'm just a little further along in my grief process than maybe other people who were closer to her at the time might be, if that makes sense. When I already told you those details. Where? Here. Why? Is there a why? How the fuck not? Nuclear war could happen any day now. Do if it's not harming anybody, do whatever the heck you want. Uh, and how? Through a lot of therapy. Through how many therapists did it take me to find the first one that like worked for me? There was one. I went through like four therapists before finding one that really worked for me. Worked with them for nearly 2 years, then like had a break because they switched jobs and like were out of my insurance. um, and then finally came back to another therapist, which I'm so grateful worked for me. And we're almost finished with our stuff. Um, but I went into that therapist fully with the intention, like I think it's time to go no contact with my mom and uh let's go back in time a little bit. I made a lot of notes for this because I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna be such a scrambled brain that I need some form of structure. I'm already scrambled, don't you see? I'm gonna reset myself though, because I'm bisexual and I need to. Hold on. Over here, over these beautiful foam roses, I will put a picture of this picture is from 2 weeks before my younger sibling was born. And sometime before this, I was told by my mother was the first time she hit me. She told me that she'll never forget the look in my eyes after she did that, and then continue to be physically abusive for like decades. So I mostly experienced the emotional abuse and emotional neglect, too sensitive, no common sense. She used to like blame my Polish side for that. Just it's kind of messed up, right? That's don't make fun of half of your kid's ancestry. Like I don't know, whatever. And I want to show some gratitude and thankfulness. And surely there's a better word that's not coming to me right now. But when I read Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, the abuses were not identical. I'm going to go ahead and say that they were not identical. Vibes were similar. And it helped me kind of look back at it and go like, yeah, that was weird. And again, I don't if you're like close to me, perhaps I'd talk about that with you, but I have only ever spoken to my most current therapist about it. It's taken me a long time to kind of be like, yo, what the fuck? Um, but also like the enmeshment was so real. The enmeshment. learning about that concept, I was like, oh, that's why I don't feel like a person. Like, I related so hard to like mommy's best friend, the good kid. She proclaimed to, publicly to the family, to her friends. So again, that's why I don't want to involve my siblings in this. They've certainly got their own side to things. And I related also to Jeanette in the book whenever her mom would go on these tirades, that she would also get mad at her siblings and be like, why can't you just acquiesce to mommy's demands and then everybody can be happy? Why can't everybody just do what she wants so that nobody gets hurt? And like, her favorite song was my favorite song, and she liked green, so I liked green, and she was one of six kids, so I wanted to have six kids. Like, I was doing so much to just try to like be this person that mommy loved. And funny enough, I get that from her, but I don't want to get into that again. I'm trying to focus just on my side of my life. She used to always call me her angel because apparently her getting pregnant with me saved her from a life of destructive behaviors. My perspective is I didn't sign up for that. There wasn't like a job board that I really circled that one and was like, yeah, that's a task I'm looking to fulfill. But also make me a completely helpless baby that needs her for everything. Yeah, I want to take on that challenge. Um, and in all of my birthday cards, of course, she would also call me her angel. And she didn't spell it correctly for a really long time. I don't want to make any speculations. She was not, I don't think she was ever tested for any learning disabilities. And no shame to anybody with learning disabilities, okay? So we just because she did harmful things to me, we're not making fun of her for her spelling. That's not what we're doing. When I was 13 though, I kind of thought at this point, that was the thought that was running through my head when I was 13, okay? I was like, I should just teach her how to spell it, right? This thing she calls me, I should teach her how to spell it. And so I presented it to her. I was like, Mom, do you know how to spell gel? She's like, yeah, Gel. And I'm like, okay, so like angel. And I don't think she ever looked at me the same after that. Um, was it sort of a dick way to go about it? Yeah, I was a fresh teenager, not a colleague at work. I was a kid. You could have been like, hey, that was kind of rude of you. But we never spoke of it again. I I sneezed and now my eye is twitching. Do you see that? Stop it. Okay, I think we're good, but if it starts twitching again, shut up about it, okay? So she like really wanted me to stay home for college. Um, and I did for the beginning, first 3 years, because I started one school that I was pressured to go to by my parents. I had no idea what I wanted to do. But you know, pressure. This again, this isn't new, and this isn't necessarily. I don't see it as trauma personally. Maybe because it is just so common, but this gets a little deeper. Um, I thought about ending my life when I was like 12. Um, and I could never speak to my family about it because every time I was sad about anything, they told me I was stupid for being sad. And I have heard from people who have experienced this before, like when you don't think you're gonna make it past a certain age, particularly when that age is so young, you just don't think about what comes after that. That wasn't worded so well, but like I hadn't thought about what I wanted to be when I grew up after I turned 12. Like I wanted to be a librarian because I thought it was just sitting around and reading books. But I didn't know. And being so good at math and relatively good at science, parents did what they thought was best. They said, let's get her in STEM. Except that they've also kind of raised it as like you're going to college to meet a rich husband to marry. That's another thing. Um, but yeah, I lived at home because I went to that college and then flunked out, was depressed for reasons, and then flunked out. And then I went to a couple years of community college before going away to school. Now, a funny thing about going away to school, and one of the things my mother had expressed concern about is I used to experience quite a few like physical ailments, so to say, um, that they almost never sent me to a doctor for. Like, there's a certain subsection of boomers that are like, mental illness isn't real. Um, and my parents, even though one of them was fully diagnosed as mentally unwell is not the word I want to use, diagnosed with a mental illness. They were like, nah, she's just annoying. She just cries all the time, and it's so annoying. Like, oh my god, shut up. But I also suffered cramping in the perennial region. There it is. And I also suffered migraines, like really hefty migraines. That's I've mentioned before. Started when I was age 8, and I am never not going to be kind of pissed off at that doctor for being like, no further questions. My these ailments, my mom kind of would get worried. So we got me a big bottle of Excedrin migraine before I went off to school, and I went to school in a different state. And because I was like busy with my studies and socialization, whatever, I didn't have a lot of contact with people back home. And I stopped getting sick. So that's kind of like the first inkling that I didn't even register at the time. I was just like, oh, that's so weird. Like, I go to a more stressful environment, I get less stress migraine. But there's like seed number one is once I left that environment, I stopped getting sick. Oh, rats. I wanted to mention this before I talked about going to school because on top of like wanting me to stay at home to go to college, like wanting me to go somewhere closer and to commute and to live at home, um, I had what was I couldn't recognize at the time, but I look back fondly on now. I was in a really good relationship. When I was 19, I was in a really good romantic relationship. Was it perfect? Of course not. I was 19 and I hated myself, right? But every day of that relationship, and maybe not every day exactly, but very, very frequently, my mother and sibling would they would tell me all the time that that boyfriend didn't love me, that he thought I was stupid, and that I was a slut, and he did not respect me, and he was not my friend, and he was only with me because I slept with him, and that he was probably cheating on me all the time. What a weird thing to do. And like minor in the grand scheme of all the things, but what a weird thing to do. So the entire relationship I couldn't enjoy it because I was like, I'm trying to impress this guy that fucking hates me. And I wish I was able to see that he did like me. But also, if you happen to see this person I was dating at the time, again, I look back fondly on it and genuinely, like, breaking up with me was the best thing you could do for me. Because I was like, fuck, I did not handle this breakup well. I gotta get out of town. And that's when I started going to school out of state. And that's when I stopped getting sick from stress. So shout out to you. I hope you are thriving. Okay, so we're going to jump forward a couple of years to 2014. It is my last year of college. And after years of going through very, very complicated feelings, I was able to come out to myself as bisexual. So I finally was like, I came out to myself, and then I came out on tumblr.com. And so a few of my closest friends knew, but I didn't say it to anybody else for another like year ish. I nearly told my dad when he was in hospice, but I was like, well, what if that is so shocking that it kills him and then it's all my fault? Just queer things. I think a month or so after my father passed, I went with my sister to a baseball game. And we went with our brother and his friends, but partway through the game, we like noticed our cousin was there. And so we left our brother and we went to hang out with our cousin. And then we went back to, he was staying in a house nearby. And we were having one of those like back patio table talks. I'll try and put a picture somewhere. So I know I've seen it as a meme. That's like talks at this table are the realest, and genuinely, because it was, you know, a lot of alcohol in, but it was, me and my sister and my cousin, and I came out to them, and they were very cool about it, and particularly my cousin was like, all right, let's talk this through because that sure as shit came out of nowhere. um but my mother was furious that we were still out so late. I won't get into why. Um, but she was very, very particularly mad at my sister because we were out later than we said we were going to be. And we get an Uber. My mom's calling my sister, just screaming, 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 screaming at her. Um, and I've got a lot of alcohol in me at this point, right? Um, the eldest daughter in me, the coping mechanism was like, I have to get mommy's attention off of this and onto me. And, usually that would calm her down, but in this particular instance, it sure did not. Um, so we came home, she's screaming, 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 and I am trying to tell her, like, look, we're out late because of me. That was not necessarily the truth, but that's what I said to get the attention deflected to me. And so of course, she's still screaming, but it feels like maybe she's screaming at a slightly lower volume than before. And she was like, well, why? Why did you have to stay out so late? And I said, because I'm bisexual. She screamed at me for 2 days straight. And I wish that was an exaggeration. Well, I guess we took breaks to sleep, and she took breaks to slam doors and be in different rooms from me. But she screamed at me for 2 days about that. And for Christmas that year, She got me a book called Gay and Catholic, which I've mentioned on this channel before, and said, this is a secret, but she gave it to me completely in secret. She said, nobody can know that I gave you this. And again, the book is like, it's okay. God made us all the way that we are, which means that God made you so that you can never date and have a spouse and just dedicate your whole life to serving Him. Yeah. Specifically, she said, like, your grandmother can never know about this. Okay. Essentially telling me I can't bring someone home to my family that isn't a man until she dies, which I've mentioned before is a fucked up thing to put into my head, right? That's not nice. That I could be like, wow, I can only be happy when that woman dies. What? What? Years go by. I stifle who I am as a person. I date women, but I end up freaking out and bailing after a few dates because I can't get serious with this person because I have to wait until this woman dies. And and finally, my mother was a triple jumper. The last time I was in her apartment, she had a picture of his ear boo boo on her refrigerator. On her refrigerator. She also used to fall asleep to his speeches. So losing a family member to a cult is also part of this, but not a part that I feel appropriately prepared to discuss in this particular video. Again, we're just trying to talk about my experiences, why I went no contact. Okay, so 2020, I've already had a crying phone call on the phone with this woman 4 years ago about how badly my friends were going to suffer and about how the policies directly affect me, right? A queer person. She knew, because I told her in 2015 that I was a queer person and still voted for this man. And she knows that I am on birth control and she's tried to get me off of it because of God or whatever. But I essentially got her to back off by saying, like, hi, this is the reason I don't feel like ending my own life all the time anymore. Because PMDD was also something I used to suffer from, and I'm incredibly thankful for birth control. I'm going to keep on it as long as I can. Already had a screaming, crying phone call with her in 2016 about like how much me and the people I love, and I was a teacher at the time too. I was like, everything bad is going to happen to groups that I love and am involved with. And continuously, she voted against things that would be helpful to me, things that would protect my life. Changing how I sit again. Hold, please. So, right, again, 2020, I'm fucking sick of these people who are reposting Breitbart news and openly supporting this person who had just been ruining everything for the past 4 years, specifically things that people they allegedly love, me, were involved with. And, you know, this was also 2020. We had a global pandemic that we were trying to figure out how to fight. And I lived in New York City at the time in a studio apartment by myself. I was on lockdown in my apartment by myself for months. I would hear a neighbor a few doors down cough and 3 days later be taken out of a body bag. The ambulances were constant, at least one every hour. So yeah, my brain had kind of fucking had it, right? Reasonably so. I mean, come on, there were a bunch of celebrities sat on a couch and sang Imagine. All of our brains went kind of crazy at that time. That school year, were they were getting ready to send us in. Vaccines are not ready yet, right? Many people besides essential workers are advised to still stay at home. They're sending children back into school, germ machines back into the germ factory, right? Um, and we were specifically told at a meeting, it's like because we need, when you buy lunch from the restaurants in the area, when you buy lunch from businesses in the area, it stimulates the economy, and they need you back. And then they told us make sure you have a will prepared because we did have one. Was she a teaching assistant with she? I'm not remembering exactly because it's been several years since I was even a teacher at all. But she was a teaching assistant, and she had died like early in the lockdown, like maybe have might even have been March or somewhere between March and May. And so a coworker had died, so they said, "All right, go back to work. Make sure you have a will prepared." And that's when I got into the therapy that started to get me into this what are the disentangling. I feel like that's a good word to use when it's enmeshment. Like you're going and you gotta get untangled, disentangling. I know like some of the Duggars use it, but that's not. It's a good word, okay? Because I was like, I can't go through this without therapy. I'm gonna go fucking crazy. And essentially it came down to my therapist being like, well, why are you allowing anyone to treat you like this? Like you could quit the job. Why are you staying in a place where you constantly feel disrespected to the point of like they genuinely just told you they don't respect whether you get sick or not, whether you live or die? Which ties back to the self worth that I learned in childhood. Um, and I came out 2020. I came out to everybody on Facebook. And then I just decided I just dropped it and then like turned my phone off essentially. Like I just did not check Facebook at all. Uh from what I was told, I wasn't told specifics, but it was a bit brutal from some family members in the comments. My mom sent a message through my sibling that I was disinvited from Christmas that year. I'd been booted from the family. That was really fucking hard. It was really, really hard. Um, Especially at that time where I was still isolated in my studio apartment in New York City with people dying all around me. It was overwhelming. But I don't think that anybody understands that like she went no contact with me first. She kicked me out before I left on my own. That conveniently gets so forgotten in the narratives of things. And I just wanted to make that clear that she could have stood up for me. She could have defended me. She could have loved me. But her God said, none of that. No, no, none of that's good. No. Uh, and in fact, the suffering you will go through by choosing to not love your child for who she is, that suffering's really, really good. Anytime you suffer, just offer it up to Jesus. And if you just keep suffering and suffering, I promise you're going to have a fantastic time in heaven. So, do you see how I was never going to win? she was never going to come around to my side because she saw it as part of God's big test. From what I understand, I guess, based off of, the things she said and her behaviors. But slowly but surely, I'm kind of let back in. I get Christmas presents mailed to me. And at one point in, was it 2022? Yes, it was 2022. I had to come stay at her place because I couldn't stay at my friend's place where I normally would stay because I was there for her surprise bridal shower. So I had to stay with my mom. And she was having a beer. And she said, I'm celebrating the defeat of Roe v. Wade. Uh, which was hard for me because I care about people. And I also said to her, like, in a snarky tone, reasonably so, in my humble opinion, that Clarence Thomas said they were coming after birth control next. So when they take my birth control away, will you still be celebrating? And what she said next will never leave me. Um, she said, who's Clarence Thomas? Also, I would like to address that during this period of time where I was in therapy, from 2020 to 2022, there was a time where my mother and my sibling wanted to meet with my therapist. They wanted to tell their side of things. They essentially wanted to call me a liar to my therapist. And my sibling tried to seek out my therapist on their own and then accused me of lying about my own therapist's name, which for the record I hadn't, but hearing this situation described to you, aren't you like, yeah, maybe you should have lied, right? And of course I told my therapist about this, um, fucking just in case. And first of all, she noted, she was like, if you don't want them in therapy, we're not going to meet with them in therapy because she's not an ethical therapist. And she asked me, like, in terms of your sibling, should I be concerned for my safety? And this sibling has a pattern of wanting to do similar things, not necessarily acting on it. But I was like, I think we're good. Um, yeah, I wanted to mention that because that's like particularly fucked up in my opinion. So once I was let back in, I wanted to try to like I wanted so bad for my mother to see my side of things. Because if she did, and I'm her daughter and she loved me for all that time when I was trying to be like her. But if she's it's okay, so I tried to write this out, but it's like, I was mirroring her for all this time and I thought it was like a real mirror. And so I thought maybe if I start doing stuff, then she'll start doing it too. Um the thing is like the mirror was like it was like clear plastic. I couldn't ever convince her to see things through my perspective because she believed that her perspective was the one true perspective. But I still tried. I was like, if I tried to share information with her, I tried to have talks with her, and whenever I made a good point against her belief, she shut down the conversation. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can reach her through Jesus, right? Because she had been going to Latin Mass for a while, which, in my opinion, is regressive to a time where the lay people were so lowly you were not allowed to know what the priest was saying. The priest never had his back to you the whole time. And I went to one Latin Mass, and I just gotta say, the people sitting up, when you are with a line of people that just goes up and kneels in front of this guy with this teenage boy, and you have to kneel and like put your head back and put your tongue out to receive the Eucharist. It looks so weird. I hate it. Vatican II for life, okay? It's weird. The whole thing is a weird situation. And I think Vatican II made Catholicism look a little less culty. Um, but, I was like, trying to reach her through Jesus was kind of my last hope. So, Christmas of 2024, I got her two books. One was Star Spangled Banner. Nope. One was called Star Spangled Jesus by April Ajoy, who is someone I follow on my main Instagram account, who is a deconstructed conservative evangelical. She's still very much a Christian. And the book is about like how she kind of deconstructed from her faith based on like how evangelicals were suddenly worshiping Donald Trump. So I got her that book, and how she worked through like, because of what Jesus teaches, this is not this is not the way. This is not Jesus's teachings. I got her that book. And then I also got her the book called The Shack, which I mentioned in my book review video. I loved The Shack. I read The Shack when I was unemployed, and I cried it like four different times because it was just such a beautiful story of like letting go of a fear-based faith and just like have it be about love and taking things as they come and go and forgiving yourself. Like, forgiveness is pushed so hard in religion, but not really forgiving yourself, which is on purpose in my opinion, but again, something else. And I gave her the book The Shack, and I also got a large print copy for my grandmother. And my mother's reaction to the first book was she texted me asking, "Is this anti-Trump propaganda?" To which I had to respond, like, I mean, genuinely, I hadn't read it, but I had seen April be interviewed by, I believe it was Fundy Fridays, and I liked the concept, and I thought, if only my family could read this, they would understand, they would come around, they could love me again, yay. Um, but alas, that I guess that didn't work. And then in reference to The Shack, um, she had gotten partway through it and sent me this whole big like paragraph text about, this is a terrible book. I can't believe you would have me read something as horrible and disturbing as this, because there's a very big tragedy that kind of sets off the plot in The Shack, and it is a tragedy that happens to a child. She then goes on to say that the book is woke trash. If you didn't know, for most of the book, most, not even all, most of the book, God presents themselves as a black woman, because the main character going through some shit, okay, and God presents themselves as a figure from the main character's past who was a comfort to him, because the main character also, I believe, grew up in an abusive home. This woman was a neighbor or something, I think, who would comfort him and, give him, little treats and snacks if he was having a bad day. Something like that. God presents himself as this person who is a black woman. Later, towards the very end of the book, God transforms into what I think is a Native American man. I don't 100% remember about that, but it is God presents as a man at the end of the book. Not woke trash. Woke trash. And to have a when some that book changed my life, genuinely changed my life, my perspective, helped me out so much through a time of uncertainty and stress and fear. And she called it woke trash because God was a black woman. And I told her basically, if you don't finish this book, I'm giving up on you. And she did finish the book and still told me how much of trash she thought it was. So that next January, I started therapy and I came in with the goal to go no contact with my mother. I said I'd put in enough, I had toiled enough, I had spent 30 years of my life trying to make this woman happy. And it never worked for long. And the only way I could make her happy is if I never talked about my life, my friends, what I cared about, what I was learning, what I'd been reading about. The second Christmas that I wasn't allowed home, one of the presents she mailed to me was a book called A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And she gave it to me. She said, because I lived in Brooklyn at the time. And it was apparently a very famous book. It was an American classic. And she thought I'd like it. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn is my favorite book and has been my favorite book since I was in seventh grade. At the time, I had a tattoo about this book. It was the most recent tattoo I had gotten, was for A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And she thought I might like it. She thought, I just found out about this book and I thought you might like it. And that felt like the slowest stab to the heart. It was like she never knew you and she still doesn't want to. She didn't want to know me. It hurt her to know anything about me that disagreed with her very rigid religious and political beliefs. She had a lot of them. And I unfortunately don't fit the bill for like any of this. But like going back to her assigning me her angel at birth, conception, I don't know which, assigned angel at birth, ab. And biblically, I'm sure you've seen memes about biblically accurate angels, but angels in the Bible are terrifying. What their first line is almost always when they appear to somebody, almost always the first thing they say is, "Be not afraid." So if I really was her angel, and the way that I was like scaring her, she didn't see that as like a challenge to accept, like Mary did when that angel came to her. She said, just like, get that angel out of here. She told me all my life that was her angel, and then never let me save her. And that's okay. I've talked that out in the appropriate professional setting. I'm okay with it. It wasn't ever my job to save her. I didn't sign up to be her first child. While I am in therapy to begin to go no contact with her, I receive a letter from my mom. And in the letter, she apologizes for pressuring me into getting a breast reduction surgery because she and my sibling did pressure me a lot in very mean ways um, to get a breast reduction surgery in 2013 and then again in 2014. I went through with it in 2014 and I love that I did, okay? But it was my choice in 2014. It was not in 2013. But they made me go for a consultation. Um because I just didn't look right. I didn't look right. And getting that letter felt so validating for a second. It was like, "Oh, she's actually reflecting on like the really mean things she used to say about my body." Because of my weight was always brought up. My sibling was kind of naturally skinny. My mother leaned more towards skinny, and I just didn't. I was just kind of like just average. I was average for a while, and now I'm obese. And fuck everybody. I love my life. Um, but yeah, always weird about my body, and it felt so validating that like, oh, she's actually like she feels bad for asking me to go under anesthesia and have knives cut into me and pieces of me taken out because like she feels bad for pressuring me into that because of things she would say about my body, and it felt so validating. And I also happened to be exploring paganism and witchcraft like for the beginning around this time, and I had the day before receiving this letter um receipt had done this like ritual about like letting go and whatever, and to get it the letter the next day, it was ooky kooky spooky, okay? And I shared that on my witchy account that it was ooky kooky spooky that had happened. And that is when things truly started to go into hellfire. Because I'm demonic now. I did a little thing where I wrote things I didn't want to hold on to anymore on pieces of paper, and I set them on fire and then dumped them into a bucket of water because I was lighting paper on fire, and that's fire safety. Like, whatever you believe about those things, what I interpreted about it right now is just like these are things to help the human mind along, and we can get into that a little bit later. But like, she really thought like, oh, my daughter's praying to the devil now. I better write to her again and make sure she understands that this wasn't ever about her. And it turns out it wasn't. Um, she had and what did she call it? A tangerine sized lump on her breast, and didn't want to get it checked out, and wanted my sister and wanted my sibling and I to keep it a secret from everybody. And also, by the way, Amanda, stop being demonic. A little bit more context for this too. My mom had been looking forward to dying as long as I had known her. Like, there was at least twice a year conversations about when I die this, when I die that. I don't want to live too long. I hope I die before I'm 70. Just constantly. And in particularly dramatic fights with our father, she would often put her life at stake. Like if my dad tried to drive away, she would get in front of the car. And there's one particularly hmm, triggering Thanksgiving. I think it was. she had done this multiple times is unfortunately the thing. Is my parents would be screaming at each other while we were driving somewhere, and my mom demanded he pull over on the highway, and she was going to walk home. So, fuck, I hate this memory. So while her children screamed and cried in the back seat, begging mommy to not try to cross the highway, she sure went on and tried for a minute or two. So this just pushed to me more like it pushed me over the edge how little this woman cared about her own fucking life. And that's when I wrote letters of my own where I tried to ease her fears about what I was even exploring. Because at the time, it really was like I was going to this sanctuary and I was just participating in like little meetups and workshops and sitting in circles with women and talking about how much we love trees and the moon. That's it. And to them, demonic to talk about liking the moon. Have you seen the moon lately? And the moon is real. We can get into that another time. Trees are real. The moon is real. Moving on. I essentially said in my letter, like, I am not straying from the path that I am on. And it looks like you're not either. And those paths are very divergent. And it's just time we go our own separate ways. And I tried to stay in contact with my siblings' children. And I was told no in an email that insults me for like 5 paragraphs straight. Message received. Um, and then the next challenging thing about that was like literally everything in my life got better after doing that. And you know that Catholic guilt was just chomping at the bit to be like, you're a piece of shit. That you just abandoned your whole family and your life is better. You're enjoying your life because you cut off people that hate you. Like, hate might be too strong of a word, but based on what I've described, they certainly didn't like me. They didn't like any part of who I was. They didn't like that I was queer. They don't like that I follow the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth in the way that I live my life. They don't like that I feel more spiritual in nature. They, yeah, they just don't like me. Every time there's family gatherings, it was everyone's allowed to talk about politics except for Amanda. And mind you, my mother told me when I was like a teenager that she had gone on like a spiritual journey of her own. She had explored other faiths. So it was okay when she did it because she came back to Catholicism. But as soon as I said like I'm exploring different faiths, it was like get her a conservatorship. This woman has lost her mind. She's a dangerous demon. She eats children. Which that's the people you voted for. But again, another time. But yeah, I started enjoying living on my own again. I got much better at my job. I got a promotion. I was finally able to accept a healthy romantic relationship into my life. Everything just got better. And then I got the call about 2.5 weeks ago And that's when the anxiety came back. And again, that was for the most part because I had no idea what my extended family was going to do when they saw me. So that was the last fear that I had. And then that came and passed, and it's over now. And I want to say, for those who are struggling with no contact, thinking about going no contact, who have done it and worry about what about the end of this person's life? While I am heartbroken that there are some relations that I know I'm not going to see again because I've been told to stay away from such relations. Right? I'm heartbroken about that, and I hope one day that changes, but I have to accept that someday, it maybe it won't. So that is sad to me. I don't regret anything. And something that, again, Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, within my healing, I was glad that I didn't wait until she died to do all this work and to live a life that I like with people who like me, who love me unconditionally, actually. It's so fucking cool, man. And everybody deserves to live this way. And I tried, right? Like I said, with those books, with the conversations I tried to have with her, I tried to say, you don't have to live in fear. She didn't believe me. That's her prerogative. And it's over. So, in terms of what's next for this channel, because nothing's next, I just said the end on that story. It's over. In my next video, I'm gonna talk about a book again. So I saw this, I think, on just like books you might like or whatever. But this book, the title of it stood out to me, and I've thought, based on the title, that I was really gonna enjoy this book. So it is called Jesus is Greater Than Religion: Why He is So Much Better Than Trying Harder, Doing More, and Being Good Enough. And as someone who at that point was like, well, I don't know that I like Christianity, but I'm interested in Jesus, I thought I was really gonna love this book. And then I opened the book and saw who had praised it. And one of those people, in fact, the first quote of praise for this book is from Governor Mike Huckabee, governor at the time. Mike Huckabee, powerful IBLP member Mike Huckabee, liked this book. And so did Candace Cameron Bure. And so I thought, oh no, I don't know if I'm going to like this book. But I went through this book that was published in 2013, and I went through and I highlighted things that I agreed with in pink and things that I disagreed with in orange. And I had thoughts. So, as you can see, this is highlighted and annotated up. And I think for the next, what I want to do on this channel next is go chapter by chapter through this book and just talk about what I agree with, what I disagree with, how this book was written in 2013, what you could evolve your thoughts from there. It's gonna be fun. I like to read and I like to talk about it, okay? If you watched this, thank you. Thank you for hearing me. Um, that's all I have to say. If you want to like it, that'd be cool, I guess. If you want to subscribe, because I'm gonna talk a bit about deconstruction stuff too. Go ahead and do that. That would be cool. That'd be nice of you. If you want to leave a supportive comment, that would also be really nice of you. I would open into a random page of my Bible, but my laptop is currently resting on top of it. Um, hmm. Is anything fun in this book? Let's open up to a random page in this book, give you a little preview of what I was reading with. Something I highlighted in orange, the disagree color, is if something is done with a thankful heart, then it is Christian behavior. And in my note up top here, I said, oh God, can you see that? Pete Hegseth was really thankful to bomb Iran. Christian. Okay, bye.